In 1969, 30-year-old Sharon Kinne was one of the most infamous inmates at the women's prison in Iztapalapa on the east side of Mexico City, where she was serving a 13-year sentence for murder. Her fellow inmates gave her the nickname La Pistolera, the gunfighter, which was adopted by the Mexican press as her notoriety grew. An investigator back in her home state of Missouri, where she had been tried 4 times for 2 murders, had dubbed her the pistol-packing mama. The residents of both Missouri and Mexico were fascinated by the young, beautiful woman and her scandalous crimes. However, Sharon would not obtain true international infamy until December 7, 1969, when she escaped from prison and became a fugitive. Her escape and the mystery of her whereabouts inspired both an international search and worldwide speculation. Her fate would remain unknown for more than 55 years. On January 30th, 2025, the Kansas City Police Department and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office held a press conference in Missouri to inform the public that they had finally learned how La Pistolera had spent her decades running from the law. Sharon's extensive interactions with law enforcement had begun more than 9 years before her infamous prison escape on March 18, 1960. That evening, 20-year-old Sharon and her family, her 25-year-old husband James, and their 2 children, had plans to attend a church meeting. James went to take a nap around 3:30 and asked Sharon to wake him up at 5:30 so that they could leave for church. Just before that time, Sharon went into the bathroom in their home in an unincorporated area of Missouri that is now a part of the City of Independence to get ready for the meeting before waking up her husband. Sharon later claimed that while she was in the bathroom, she heard her 2.5-year-old daughter say, "How does this thing work, Daddy?" and then a loud gunshot. Sharon claimed that when she ran into her bedroom, she found her daughter with her husband's .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol in her hand, and her husband with a single bullet wound to the head. James would be dead by the time he was transported to a local hospital. When police arrived at the scene, they did not perform any sort of testing for gunshot residue on the hands of either Sharon or her daughter. They could not pull fingerprints from the grip of the pistol because it was very well oiled. Neighbors and family members told police that James would let his daughter look at the guns he owned. The little girl was able to pull the trigger of a gun like the one that had killed her father when police performed a controlled test with her. Therefore, James Kinne's death was ruled an accident. Sharon collected $29,000, equivalent to more than $250,000 today in life insurance money. Sharon spending some of that insurance money would ultimately lead to her being connected to another death. Sharon used part of the payout to purchase a Ford Thunderbird convertible, which brought her into contact with a married car salesman named Walter Jones. Just a few weeks after becoming widowed, Sharon began an affair with Walter and reportedly wanted him to become her second husband, despite the fact that he had a wife and 2 children. On May 25, 1960, Sharon told Walter she was pregnant with his child. Instead of leaving his wife Patricia, as Sharon had expected, Walter broke off the affair. According to some reports, Patricia was also pregnant at the time. The following evening, May 26th, Patricia Jones never returned home from work. Walter filed a missing persons report with police and spent the following day looking for her. When he spoke to the women Patricia carpooled to work with, they told him that the previous day, Patricia had received a phone call at work from an unknown woman who wanted to meet with her. They therefore dropped Patricia off at a street corner in Independence, rather than at home as they normally did. They saw the woman, who was waiting in a car for Patricia, but did not recognize her, and could only provide a very general description of her. As imprecise as the description of the unknown woman was, Walter immediately suspected that it had in fact been Sharon Kinne. He called her to ask if she was in fact the woman Patricia had last been seen with, and Sharon admitted that she had met with Patricia on the 26th. She told Walter that she had contacted Patricia to tell her about the affair she was having with Walter, but in later testimony, Sharon would say that she had lied to Patricia and told her that it was Sharon's sister who was having the affair with him. Sharon claimed to have dropped Patricia off near the Jones family home and to have seen Patricia talking to a man in a green Ford as she drove away. Walter did not trust this account and later went to see Sharon in person and demand that she tell him where his wife was. She did not. However, after she saw Walter, Sharon called John Boldies, a friend she had dated when they were in high school. She asked him to help her look for Patricia, which he was reluctant to do. Sharon convinced him to go out to a remote quarry road, a mile out of town, to look for her. There, they found the body of Patricia Jones. She had been shot 4 times, once in the head, once in the abdomen, and twice in the shoulders. John wanted to call the police, but Sharon ordered him to take her home and not mention her involvement with the discovery of the body to the authorities. John tried to comply with this order, but very quickly had to divulge Sharon's involvement when he reported the body to police. Police spent the next several days conducting various interviews, administering lie detector tests, and searching for physical evidence at the scene. Sharon Kinne, John Boldies, and Walter Jones were all investigated thoroughly. With Sharon connected to a murder, police also began looking into James Kinne's death again. It quickly became apparent that the Kinne's marriage had not been a happy one. Sharon had a number of affairs, including one with John Boldies. The location where they had found Patricia's body was one where they had previously gone to park a car and engage in said affair. Sharon had been trying to get James to agree to a divorce before his death, but she was demanding both money and their house as a settlement. James's parents were devout Mormons who encouraged him to stay in the marriage. However, on the morning of his death, James had told them that he had enough evidence of Sharon's infidelity to secure a divorce without having to agree to her outrageous financial demands. Patricia Jones was buried on May 31st, 1960. That evening, around 11 p.m., Sharon Kinne was arrested for her murder. She would later also be charged with her husband's murder. Sharon's trial for Patricia's murder was delayed due to her pregnancy. She gave birth to a daughter, alleged by Sharon to have been fathered by Walter Jones, on January 16, 1961. Sharon went on trial for the murder of Patricia Jones in June of 1961. The prosecution presented 72 exhibits of evidence and 27 witnesses. The prosecution's case was circumstantial. The main problem with their case was the fact that they could not produce the gun that had killed Patricia. Patricia had been shot with a .22 caliber firearm, the same caliber that had killed James Kinne. However, the firearm that killed James remained in police custody, despite Sharon's extensive efforts to have it returned to her. A man Sharon worked with did admit to buying a .22 caliber pistol for her on May 12, 1960, at her request. He had originally had the gun registered in her name, but changed it to his own name after Sharon got upset with him and insisted he do so. However, Sharon claimed to have lost the pistol. A box that could have contained it was found in the Kinne home, but not the firearm itself. Police had searched the area surrounding the crime scene in hopes that it had been disposed of there, but could not find it. While Sharon's co-worker's testimony showed that she theoretically had access to a .22 caliber pistol at the time of Patricia's murder, without the actual pistol, they could not perform testing to see if it was a match to the firearm that had been used in the murder. On June 22, 1961, an all-male jury found Sharon not guilty of the murder of Patricia Jones. The courtroom erupted in applause when the verdict was read, and Sharon stopped to sign an autograph for one of the jurors on her way out of the courtroom. Sharon then went on trial for the murder of her husband in January of 1962. The prosecution argued that the Kinne's marriage had been about to fall apart due to Sharon's infidelity, and she knew she would not be entitled to any of James's life insurance money should they divorce before his death. The main witness for the prosecution was one of Sharon's lovers, John Boldies, who testified that while he was sneaking around with Sharon a few weeks before James had died, she had offered him $1,000 to kill her husband, and asked if he knew anyone who would accept the offer after he refused it. Sharon was found guilty on January 11, 1962, and sentenced to life in prison for the murder of her husband James. However, in March of 1963, the Missouri Supreme Court reversed her conviction and ordered a new trial on the basis of Sharon's defense having been denied adequate peremptory challenges during jury selection in her original trial. Sharon was released from prison after her brother Eugene posted her $25,000 bail. Sharon's second trial for the murder of her husband began on March 23, 1964, but ended in a mistrial after just a few days, when it was discovered that one of the jurors had previously retained one of the law partners of the prosecutor. Sharon's third trial for James's murder began on June 29, 1964. The jury was unable to reach a verdict, deadlocked at 7 votes to 5 in favor of acquittal, resulting in another mistrial. Sharon was set to go on trial for James's murder a fourth time in October of 1964, and remained free on the bail posted by her brother. However, a month before her trial was set to begin, Sharon left her children with James's father and left Missouri with a new lover, Frank Pugliese. While the couple was not actually married, they traveled and registered at their hotels as a married couple, and Sharon began going by the name Jeanette Pugliese. Legally, Sharon was allowed to travel under the terms of her bail, but under the terms of her agreement with her bond company, she was not to leave the state of Missouri without their written consent, which she never obtained. Sharon and Frank stayed at the Hotel Gin in Mexico City, but on the evening of September 18, 1964, Sharon was across town at a different hotel with a different man. 35-year-old Francisco Paredes Ordóñez was an American citizen who had been born in Mexico and had returned there for vacation. He was staying at the Hotel Levada. That evening, he walked into the hotel with a woman and told the night clerk, Enrique Martinez Rueda, that she was his wife as they made their way to his room. Sometime later, Enrique heard a gunshot coming from Francisco's room and ran towards it. On his way, he saw Sharon leaving the room. When she realized Enrique was going to try to stop her from leaving, she shot him in the shoulder. Enrique was still able to stop her, grabbing the gun and pushing her back into the room, where Francisco lay dead, shot twice in the chest. Enrique locked her in the room until the police arrived. Sharon claimed that she had gone to the hotel room with Francisco to look at some photographs after meeting him in a bar. She said that she had shot him with the intent to frighten, not kill him, when he made sexual advances towards her. The police did not believe her. They instead theorized that she had killed Francisco while she was attempting to rob him, as she and Frank had almost run out of money. She claimed to have shot Enrique because she believed he was coming to attack her. Francisco had been killed and Enrique had been wounded with a small gun Sharon had purchased after arriving in Mexico. However, when Sharon and Frank's hotel room was searched, police found a .22 caliber pistol. Testing of the pistol confirmed that it was the weapon that had been used to kill Patricia Jones. Despite a public outcry in Missouri and demands from the public that Sharon be retried for the murder, the prosecutor legally could not do so because of the double jeopardy clause of the Fifth Amendment. On October 18, 1965, Sharon was found guilty of murder and attempted robbery and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Sharon appealed her conviction, but doing so increased her sentence rather than secure her freedom. 3 judges in Mexican Superior Court dismissed the attempted robbery charge, but found that Sharon's initial sentence of 10 years had been too lenient and increased it to 13 years. Because she had been in custody for Francisco's murder in Mexico on the day her 4th trial for the murder of James Kinne began, she obviously failed to appear in court for it. A capias warrant, in order to arrest an individual to ensure they appear in court after they fail to make a scheduled appearance, was issued, but authorities in Missouri were content to allow Sharon to serve her full sentence in Mexico before executing it. They never had the chance to, due to Sharon's escape from prison. The first indication that Sharon had escaped came at the 5 p.m. roll call on December 7, 1969, when Sharon failed to appear. She missed a second roll call later that evening. However, the prison did not notify Mexico City police of the escape until 2 a.m. At that point, a massive manhunt was launched. The search initially focused on the neighborhoods closest to the prison, but would soon grow to a countrywide and then international search. The most intensive searches ended after only about 10 days, as Mexican officials believed that by that time, Sharon would have already escaped the country. Numerous rumors flew about how Sharon had escaped prison. She had bribed prison guards. She had snuck out with the day's visitors, dressed as a man. She had taken a prison guard as a lover. She had been helped by fellow prisoners or by the family of one of her victims, who then killed her. There had been a blackout at the prison around the time Sharon would have escaped, and a review of the prison's procedures found that a door that should have been kept closed was routinely propped open, and that the facility was understaffed. So Sharon's escape could have had a much more mundane explanation. Where Sharon went after she escaped would remain a source of international investigation as well as speculation for decades to come, as authorities in Missouri continued to look for her and as public fascination with the fugitive grew, as the case continued to be covered in the media over the next 55 years. Sharon had become fluent in Spanish during her time incarcerated in Mexico, making any Spanish-speaking country a possible destination for her. A very early rumor held that she had escaped to Guatemala. Her main lawyer in Missouri owned a mountain ranch in Honduras, leading to speculation that she was hiding out there. Sharon's mother and brother had moved to Alaska, so some believed Sharon had followed them north. Despite ongoing efforts by police in Missouri, Sharon Kinne remained at large. She remained the subject of the longest outstanding warrant for murder in Missouri and one of the longest outstanding felony warrants in U.S. history. Authorities in Missouri announced to the public that the mystery of what had become of Sharon Kinne after she became a fugitive had been solved on January 30th, 2025. However, they had actually confirmed her fate nearly a year earlier, on May 31st, 2024, the 64th anniversary of Sharon Kinne's initial arrest. The tip that had ultimately pointed investigators in the right direction came in December of 2023. The Kansas City, Missouri Police Department and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office received an anonymous tip claiming that Sharon Kinne had died on January 21st, 2022, after living for nearly 50 years under an assumed name in Canada. Investigators learned that shortly after the death of the woman identified by the tipster as Sharon Kinne, a funeral home had taken 3 of her fingerprints, which were now stored in a database. They were able to subpoena these records. May 31st, 2024, the day it was confirmed that Sharon Kinne and this deceased woman were one and the same, was the day that the fingerprints from the funeral home were matched to Sharon Kinne's fingerprints on file with law enforcement. Sharon had lived out her days as Deidre D. Glabus in the small town of Tabor, Alberta. She had gotten married to a man named James Glabus in Los Angeles, California on February 2, 1970, less than 2 months after escaping from prison in Mexico. She and her husband moved to Tabor in 1973. They owned the Tabor Motel for some time, and then they both went on to work as realtors and own the Century 21 agency in Tabor. At some point, Dee served as the chair of Tabor's Daycare Center Steering Committee. She has been described by Tabor residents as a kind and sweet woman. James Glabus died on August 11, 1979, at the age of 38. He was a diabetic and an alcoholic who died at home after falling into a diabetic coma following a night of drinking. Dee remarried in 1982 to a man named William L. They remained married until William's death from natural causes at the age of 79 on April 7, 2011. Dee died on January 21, 2022, with no one in her community knowing her true identity. Authorities in Missouri did originally plan to announce that Sharon Kinne had been identified and that her case was now closed due to the fact that she was now dead in mid-2024, shortly after the fingerprint evidence confirmed that she was Dee Glabus. However, they held off so as to, in their words, tie up some loose ends. It appears that there were some efforts made to further confirm that Dee Glabus and Sharon Kinne were the same person. The press release announcing the identification does state that forensic genealogy was used in making it, and it is known that Sharon gave birth in the years following her escape from prison. There is some more publicly available information about Sharon's family in Canada, as well as early failed efforts to use DNA testing to confirm the identification made in 2024. However, all sides of Sharon's family, both in Canada and in Missouri, do not want to be associated with her case any longer and have requested privacy. While there is a small amount of additional information available to the public, it is only about testing that never occurred, and it involves the identities and wishes of some members of the family. As such, I will not be going into detail about the potential use of DNA or other evidence in this case. There may or may not be further evidence confirming that Dee Glabus was in fact Sharon Kinne, but if there is, it is not public knowledge, so infringing on the privacy of her family members by discussing their identities or roles in the investigation does not serve any real purpose in the context of this video. As such, I will end on the words of unspecified members of the Kinne family, in the form of a statement they have released through a spokesperson on the matter. On behalf of the Kinne family, we would like to state how happy we are that this chapter in our family history can be closed. Sharon was a woman that never faced the consequences of her actions, leaving them for her children to deal with. She caused great harm without thought or remorse. Hopefully, this closure will allow the family a chance to heal from her traumatic legacy.